Before the sun crested the distant hills, the world along the winding creek was already alive. Suli, a young Nisenan Maidu girl, padded quietly through the dew-brushed grass, her bare feet leaving soft impressions in the earth. The air was cool and sweet, filled with the promise of another day in the land her people had called home for countless generations. She reached the grinding rocks, a sacred place where the smooth surface of ancient granite was pocked with dozens of deep, round holes. Here, Suli's grandmother, Yana, was already at work. The steady, rhythmic thunk of stone pestle against rock echoed across the ravine, blending with the gentle rush of water and the distant calls of quail. Suli knelt beside her, picking up her own pestle, its surface worn smooth by the hands of her ancestors. As they worked, Yana spoke in the soft, melodic language of their people. She told stories of the land, how the oaks gave their acorns each autumn, how tule reeds were gathered from the marshes to weave baskets as strong as they were beautiful, how the people moved with the seasons, never taking more than the earth could give. Suli listened with wide eyes, her arms moving in time with her grandmother's, feeling the connection to those who had come before. The grinding rocks were more than tools, they were memory. Each hole had been shaped over centuries by the daily labor of Maidu women, deepened by the pounding of acorns, seeds, and roots. Suli imagined the hands of her great-grandmothers, and their mothers before them, all gathered in the same spot, sharing laughter and song as they prepared the food that sustained their families. When the meal was ready, Suli and her cousins carried it back to the village, where the men returned from fishing in the creek and the children played beneath the shade of ancient oaks. The air was thick with the scent of roasting fish and wild onions. As dusk settled, the people gathered around the fire. Yana, her face lined with wisdom and years, took a sharp stone and began to carve a new symbol into a boulder near the grinding rocks, a spiral marking the turning of another season. Suli watched in awe, understanding that these marks were more than art. They were a record of her people's presence, a promise that their story would endure. In the flickering firelight, the grinding rocks glowed softly, holding the echoes of laughter, the rhythm of work, and the unbroken thread of life in the land that would one day be called Miners' Ravine. The world along the creek changed with a suddenness that Suli's descendants could scarcely comprehend. It began with distant rumors, then the arrival of men with strange accents and restless eyes, their clothes heavy with dust and hope. They came with pans and picks, following the whisper of gold through the valleys and ravines, and soon the quiet places that had echoed with the laughter of Maidu children rang with the clatter of shovels and the shouts of fortune-seekers. They called the place Miners' Ravine, and they set up ramshackle camps along the banks of Dry Creek. The Maidu watched from the shadows of the oaks as the newcomers dipped their pans into the water, swirling gravel and sand in search of shining flakes. The miners' hunger for gold was insatiable, and soon the gentle panning gave way to more ambitious methods, sluices and tom-toms, contraptions of wood and metal that churned the earth and muddied the once clear waters. The land, which had given so generously to the Maidu for centuries, was now gouged and scarred. The grinding rocks, once the center of daily life, sat silent as the air filled with the din of progress. Suli's great-grandson, a boy named Toma, wandered the ravine and watched as the miners' machines grew larger and more powerful. Hydraulic hoses blasted hillsides into slurry, and the creeks ran thick with silt. The miners spoke of drift tunnels, and later of monstrous dredges that crawled along the creek, swallowing earth and spitting out piles of gravel. Toma's family, like so many others, was forced to move farther from the water, their numbers dwindling as disease and hunger followed the gold rush. Yet, amid the chaos, the grinding rocks remained. The mortar holes, carved by centuries of Maidu hands, now filled with rainwater and the dust of upheaval. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, Toma would sit beside them, tracing the petroglyphs his ancestors had left behind, feeling the weight of memory and the ache of loss. Years passed, and the fever for gold faded. The miners moved on, leaving behind tailings and rusted tools, their camps swallowed by grass and wildflowers. The land began to heal, slowly, stubbornly, as nature reclaimed what it could. The grinding rocks, battered but unbroken, endured as silent witnesses to all that had come and gone. Today, visitors walk the trails of Miners' Ravine, pausing to marvel at the ancient mortar holes and the stories they hold. They learn how the Maidu once lived in harmony with the land, how the rush for gold transformed everything, and how, through all the changes, the grinding rocks remain, a testament to the resilience of a people and the enduring spirit of a place called Roseville, California.